right, welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. Today we are live from Nashville, Tennessee at Autodesk University on the third day of the expo, and I am so very excited to talk all about delivery methods, design build, how technology plays a big role in the adoption and the effectiveness of these tools. And to help tell that story today, I'm joined by Brian Skripac, the Director of Virtual Design and Construction at the Design Build Institute of America, or DBIA. Brian, how you feeling this morning?
Doing good. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining me. I really enjoyed our kickoff call when you started sharing a bit more about the work you do, and I think we're going to have a really cool conversation. Let's just jump straight in today. Can you tell me about the Design Build Institute of America, or DBIA, and the mission and in the work that you do? Let everybody know a little bit about the background there.
Yeah, so DBIA is a professional membership-based organization that's focused on development of the best practices and the education of those best practices to successfully deliver design build project for our clients. That in a nutshell, it's pretty interesting. We have a very diverse group of members that are really focused on collaboration. So I know when I was in practice, being able to work on design build projects where we had a whole team approach that was working together at the outset, things just always went much more smoother. And having the opportunity to, transition from a traditional practice role in architecture or BIM VDC, which is where I came from, to being able to share those experiences has been fun.
I love it. And I think every time somebody that comes from industry steps into a role like yours, it has such a big impact because you have so much experience and just knowledge that you can apply to how you talk about the best practices and methodologies. There's an authenticity there that really makes a difference. And I'd love it if you could share a bit more about your own role within DBIA. Like, how do you fit into the big picture and what does your day-to-day look like?
From a big picture perspective, I had the opportunity to join 4 years ago. I was looking for a new opportunity. My former boss was actually a board member at the time, and I had reached out to her for some career advice and just getting some feedback and ideas. And a couple of days later, she called back. She's like, "Hey, I just got to have our board meeting, and Lisa Washington, who's our executive director and CEO, wants to build a technology department, something focused on BIM, VDC. The members are asking for it." She's like, "You should absolutely call her and find out, learn more about this," which I did, and ended up having the opportunity to create a position and take on that leadership role. But it's really about understanding project delivery and seeing how does technology overlay with that and how does it get implemented. So basically, like the larger mission of defining best practices, that's my goal. I define the best practices for how we use technology to collaborate, work more efficiently, be more transparent, and deliver projects in a better way. I mean, it's fun, whether that's working on white papers, working with we have a national committee of industry leaders from our member companies all across the country, doing webinars. We have a podcast. We have your peer and Erin Looney, who's in our office. She does a podcast, and a couple times a year, we get the opportunity to overlay technology on that. So there's lots of different outlets just outside of our conferences and events, like our VDC Leadership Exchange, to share knowledge. And it's really across the board. We talk about BIM, we talk about AI, reality capture, whatever it might be, but these are all tools that are helping people be more efficient. And I have the opportunity to learn from all of them and reshare that information so our members really understand how to use these tools and processes.
You're touching on one of my favorite things about the construction industry or the AECO industry more broadly is that willingness to share and be very intentional and helpful with the knowledge. And I don't think we move forward without that openness and willingness for others to help share those best practices and really change the way we operate and build because, let's be real, there are a lot of challenges that span across how we actually get work done. And I think without everybody stepping up and helping each other, it's going to be harder to continue to narrow that gap between labor shortages, technology challenges, the evolution of technology at an astonishing rate. It's exciting, but we have to be really deliberate to set the groundwork. I'd love it if you could help set that stage a little bit. For our audience who might not be as familiar, can you share some insight into the most common delivery methods and contracts types that you're seeing today on construction projects? And what are the challenges with some of the more traditional or old school options that are out there?
So I think you have, the business as usual approach is design, bid, build.
Yeah.
And then you have CM at risk, you have design, build, and you have some of the other engineering, multi-prime kind of contract deliveries. But I think the big three essentially are design, bid, build, CM at risk, and design, build. Design, build has a really sweet spot where instead of having the design professional deliver a set of drawings to the owner, and then the owner, those drawings going out to bid, getting a low bid.
Yeah.
So, okay, you're the least expensive person, you win the project. And moving forward, design build is different because you're not based on a low bid scenario. You have the owner forging a contract with a design builder. And that design builder is responsible for design and construction services. And one of the other unique things is you have the opportunity for a qualifications-based selection process. So you're not only going on low bid, the person who maybe missed the biggest chunk
Yep.
of the thing, you're not moving into that confrontational approach later where, well, I'll make it up in change orders, or I'm going to, go low and I know this and I'm going to get more money here or there. We also have a team that's working together from the outset and trying to define a common solution for the owner, as opposed to a design professional saying, my end goal is to produce a set of documents and give them to the owner.
Yeah.
And, the contractor not knowing what's in those documents till they have to prepare a cost for how they're going to deliver the work. And it's just, having those teams move together and progress through the design is a really different and unique opportunity. And you're all bound by the same contract. So you're all working for the same goal. And that's a very different approach. I think it takes a different type of team to engage in that as well. There's a different culture. There's a different willingness for collaboration and understanding of how you're going to work together, and take advantage of having the knowledge of the right team member who's probably going to be on the team earlier than you would have in other delivery methods.
As a former proposal manager, everything you're sharing right now makes me feel very happy, because like when the hard bid or lowest price technically acceptable bid proposals rolled into my inbox, we still jump in those. There's a technical narrative expectation that comes with that for winning the project. But there was no flourish. There was no, here's your betterments, here's what we can do better than the other company. And it just came down to like, how hard could the estimators grind it out, and how much can we sharpen that pencil? And your point about how much should we leave out becomes a very scary prospect in that situation as well. And I've seen that happen before, and everybody quietly shudders, and it's like, well, how much contingency do we have into that bid? If you didn't have a lot because you wanted to win it, suddenly you might be doing work, at cost or below, and that's a bad feeling. But more importantly, I feel the collaboration aspect of everything you're speaking about here really changes the game for how contractors are approaching the work that they do. It's a different way of working because there's a lot more transparency involved in the conversations. And that feels a little bit weird for folks, especially maybe if they're early on into this trajectory of adopting new approaches. But I think there is so much that comes from it. And I feel like we're just touching the surface here.
Yeah, and I think that transparency is an interesting thing too, because even for owners, right? This is a different cultural shift for owners and how they approach projects. And I think you see probably more repeat builders initially being the ones who understand and have maybe had more painful experiences in other delivery methods and see this as an opportunity. But I think from their perspective, they're able to go out and put performance-based requirements out. They're not being descriptive. You will do this, 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 and this, but saying, hey, I have a project that needs to meet this expectation. These are my goals. These are my performance requirements. This is that. And then giving the team the opportunity to bring creative solutions to them. So that transparency opens it up. Okay, if you're the builder and I'm the designer, we're going to sit down and figure this out together, and we're going to share ideas and say, well, what if we approached it this way? What if we approach it this way? How can we do that? And that fluid dialogue is there. It's not a confrontational after the fact. It's an intentional, open discussion to find the best solution to meet this goal. Because that's really what the owner is doing. So I have a goal of this. Help me find the best way to achieve that.
And I love how intentional you're describing this process here, because these things don't happen by accident. And if everybody's still just grinding away at their own small piece of the scope and they're not considering the bigger project, they may not be as forthcoming about risks that they see or problems. Everybody's kind of trying to do the CYA dance, which I understand very much in our old school approaches, where like that transparency might end up penalizing you down the line. And so it's a mindset shift, but I'm not surprised that the owners who are building on a repeat basis are more embracing this type of mindset, because they just see it over and over and over again.
Well, I think it's also a shift from risk avoidance to risk management, right? Hey, this is going to come up. How are we going to deal with it? Let's have that conversation now. Let's look at it. But also opening opportunities for, if you have mechanical trade, you're understanding supply chain issues, and they're saying, hey, I can't get this unit, or I can't get this piece of equipment till then. How do we look and manage it? Or what if we started prefabbing that and having them online? Hey, let's bring this and look at a rack system. Or are we looking at a design assist scenario where we have exterior wall panels coming in? And, I'm talking about my architectural experience, but that's really across the board, whether it's roads, bridges, other types of elements in the built environment. But having all of that expertise up front and being able to plan for it is a huge value.
So I want to take a moment to give you a chance to bust any myths or misconceptions that you hear about design build? Like, what comes across your desk, or what do you overhear on occasion where you go, ooh, like that's not quite right, or I wish people would stop saying that about this, turn their attention in the right direction?
We see that a lot, right? There's opportunities of, well, the owner doesn't have any control in the project. The design professional loses control when they're under the builder. It costs more, it takes longer, it's too much risk for the owner. You hear all of these things. I think those are maybe projects that had bad experiences and they blame it on the delivery method.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of looking at how the teams interact. Design build teams are intentional, that they are assembled as a team in going forth to pursue the project. It's not that forced marriage of other projects where a lot of confrontation may come into play. So when you're working together, you can really minimize that. And that's been one of the big things that we've seen. We do annual reports with the FMI and surveys, and they've shown data that says those projects are delivered quicker. They end up coming in on or under budget. It's less risk for the owner. You have the opportunity for innovation. You have higher quality delivery. You have more opportunities and flexibility for how you procure the projects. Like we talked about the qualification selection. So you're not just bound by that low bid.
Yeah. It seems like there's a lot of reasons to take a very good look at changing how you build, especially if you're tied to that old school design, bid, build. I'm very encouraged by folks who are talking about how can we be more effective. And I think a lot of our traditional contracts, like, just push risk downhill. And it's not particularly fair also in those relationships. As we find ways to be a bit more equitable about how we share risks, the incentives across the board are also shared. And so there's a lot of winning that comes from it. But, there's also a lot of hesitation, I think, early on for folks. And if you could qualify a couple of the biggest reasons that you hear folks saying, oh, I'm not sure, I'm really hesitant at being a bit more transparent.
The big thing is it's definitely a cultural shift, right? You have to have that mindset to work in that way. And anytime you're transitioning from business as usual, it's hard. I think on the design side, there's apprehension because that design build leader team can come in many different ways, right? It's typically contractor-led. It could be a joint venture. I came from an environment where it was designer-led, which was really interesting. But I think there's a little apprehension there. Be like, well, I want to have that direct engagement with the owner. And that's one of the myths that we hear too. Well, the owner and the architect are disconnected. And it's just not true. Contractually, that single line may be there, but you're still part of that team that's delivering the work. So those are, I think, the big apprehensions. But I've never seen anything but success out of it because just having those discussions have been so worthwhile. As a designer, I would like to know if something's not feasibly possible in construction schedule, sequencing, and cost, right? Wouldn't you like to know that now instead of when they're in construction, say, oh, we have to cut this, value engineering, right? Now you start cutting everything because you didn't know. It's a huge opportunity to want to know that beforehand.
Oh, for sure. Having that feedback instead of everybody in their little silo. And then now you've got a process that has to be implemented to make all those changes. That's a schedule conversation now. That's a money conversation. Just that level of transparency and in relationships between everybody across the team. If you do have to make a change, I would assume that it's a lot more nimble to make that change in this environment as well.
I think one of the other things too is, from what I saw in my projects when I was still on the practice side, was design fees getting lower and lower. How do you start manage? One of the things that excites me about design build and the overlay of technology is how do we start looking maybe towards more industrialized construction methods? And how do we start looking at prefab and starting to blur the lines of what construction documents are and what shop drawings are? There's so much waste in that process, especially if you think on like the mechanical engineering side or plumbing. I'm a mechanical engineer and I've spent all my time routing ductwork when the sheet metal fabricator is going to come in and has this wealth of knowledge and experience to say, well, if we do it this way, we can save materials. We have less coordination issues. We do this and that. Why not take advantage of that and have them contribute to the conversation earlier? So the engineer can focus on performance requirements and meeting all of the other sustainability goals that are on a project and not have to do the work that somebody's going to redo down the road.
And I feel like you're going to end up with a lot less surprise holes in your ductwork and other unpleasant things that happen on site where somebody goes, well, that's not my scope of work and my pipe needs to go here. And well, yes, it does. But also please, like I'm, this is very sidetracked, but I'm in a subreddit that has a bunch of like construction fail posts and you just see things like right through the joists of the building or like right through the framing and everything. You're just like, if somebody just had a conversation, you probably wouldn't have cut that hole in there. And, now we have to do all this rework to avoid a giant structural deficiency that didn't need to happen in the first place.
Well, and I think that's one of the other myths, right? So somebody on whether it's design assist on like an architectural system, well, I'm not stamping somebody else's work. It's like, well, you're still there. You're
Yeah.
part of the team. You're approving it. You're having the conversation. So you're not removing yourself completely from the process. You're just shifting and modifying how it's getting documented. And I would certainly like to know, and I've seen the success of having that technical detail person sitting down next to me saying, this is my goal. Can we do this? No, we can do it this way and get your same outcome. Like, great, let's go. Let's do that. Move forward.
I like it. So I want to get into the technology side of this conversation now. And I know that's something you're quite excited about, as you mentioned a moment ago. Tell me a bit more about how technology plays a big role in the success of design build on a construction project. Can you share a few examples of tech playing a big part of the conversation along the way?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, and I mention this a lot of times in presentations. For years and years, right, you have a design build project, you use an application like Revit or Civil 3D to create your design. It goes out to bid. The low bid comes in. That person gets it. What's the first question that somebody from the construction side asks back to the designer? Can I have your model? And then I say no. And they're like, why? Well, because it wasn't part of my contract.
Yeah.
My contract was with the owner, not you. So I gave them a set of drawings, which is what they asked for. And then you eventually...
Your adversaries on day one already.
Yeah. And you give them the disclaimer that says, hey, there's a model. It's garbage. You can use it because you asked, but, good luck. God bless. Have fun. That's a big challenge for technology, right? We have silos. We have these very intentional contractual silos and walls that allow us to not share information. So that information gets dumbed down and transitioned two-dimensionally, flat, paper-based, maybe PDF deliverables. But now we have the opportunity to collaboratively build these models for the built environment. We're sharing information from day one. We're in cloud-based systems now that allowed us to engage and bring not only our design partners, the construction partners, the trade partners, everybody in there working together and start to being able to blend and share information. The owner has transparency and, an opportunity to visualize what's going on. And those technologies have opened up other ways we can collaborate. But I think the biggest thing is the way that you move through and share information, but also plan for how you develop that information. That's one of the things I'm always excited about, is being part of those pool planning meetings at the beginning and saying, all right, we have this milestone deliverable. What do we need to get? So if you're the structural engineer, when do you need to get your design done so the steel fabricator can start coming in early, because we're going to have an early steel package that goes out. Yeah. All right, how do we transition that, and how do we evolve those models so we start seeing those fabrication details? So the architects know where there's going to be additional framing members that aren't there. We know where gusset plates are, so we can't be running roof drain leader lines down, or we can't be putting stuff up in that corner because there's going to be something there that's not in the engineer's scope, but we know is going to be coming. But even though we know it's there, we don't see it in the model, and now we move forward. So there's so many opportunities where everybody's engaged in kind of, again, working in that same direction.
And there's just so much information in any phase of a construction project. And I think using technology to offer that transparency really goes hand in hand with this very forward-thinking model and approach in contrast to the traditional design, bid, build. And it's encouraging to see that more folks are looking at changing how they deliver and operate and build. And I think, design build rather plays a really nice role in that. And I'd be curious to hear, what advice would you offer somebody who's, sitting here listening and goes, okay, design build, that sounds like that's for me. Like how should they get started? What steps kind of make that transition a little smoother?
I think the best thing is get educated on it. We're focused on saying, what is design build done right? You can do it just saying you're going to be on a team and you're under that contract structure, is not understanding the best practices of how to communicate, how to collaborate, how to work together. Really understand that. I think that's a big thing that we focus on, because we do hear a lot of the myths come from people who are just saying, well, it was a design build contract and it didn't work, but we weren't really collaborating. We didn't have that cultural shift. We weren't building out that mutual trust and respect and process workflow to move ahead. So come visit us at DBIA. We have courses, we have education, we have contrast. Hear from your peers in the industry that understand how it's being executed properly. I think that's the biggest thing, right? It's more than just a delivery method. It's a larger strategy, and that's really valuable.
I like that cultural shift that you're painting here as well. Like, this is a whole company thing, especially for the serial builders out there who are doing this over and over and over again. I feel like this will get easier down the line.
Yeah.
But also, if you have trade partners and other groups that you work with regularly, once you get them on board, I think this is going to go smoother every time moving forward. And so you're building your ecosystem, you're setting your expectations, and everybody's learning from each other. And I think over time, even if that first contract, like, it felt a little overwhelming maybe at times because it's new and change is admittedly quite hard sometimes. But I think following all the guidance that you're offering here and the hard work that DBIA does, this is very attainable and it just gets better.
Well, yeah, and think about it. You've just come off a project, you've worked with a group of people, you've built a relationship and a rapport, and you understand how to interact with them. You want to go do that again, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to come into another environment like, well, here's this team, here's this team, here's team. Go do the job and, good luck getting the success of how you did it last time. But understanding those, it's relationships, right? It's just like anything else. You have that relationship, you have that rapport, you understand how people work, you know how to communicate with them, you know what they're going to deliver, you can trust what they're going to deliver, which I think is a big thing from the BIM side too.
Absolutely.
You trust how that model is going to be developed and how you can use it and develop it moving forward.
Well, I've got a couple more questions for you, but I want to shift gears and pick your brain about your VDC background specifically. I think you've got a lot of interesting points in your career, and it'll be fun to take a closer look. But could you tell me a bit more about what a typical day or week in the life of VDC leader looks like right now? What does their life look like? And we'll get into what it looks like in the future here in a minute.
It's a little bit of everything. So one of the things, just to kind of kick that off, is one of the things that we're doing at DBIA is we're getting ready to release what are the VDC project leaders' roles and responsibilities on design build projects, which is pretty exciting. So we're going to have that document. It really kind of outlines all of the different things. So it's craziness. I think one of the fun things that this position has evolved into is VDC leaders on projects are typically practitioners. There's somebody who came out of the design side. They were a project engineer. They were working as a superintendent. They were in a trade. And they gravitated towards and understand how technology made their life easier doing work.
Yep.
It wasn't the other way around. So those people, they're on the job site. They're out seeing things, working on things. They may be back in the office working with the schedulers, working alongside them saying, all right, how do we plan out this work? And let's use the model and figure this out. They may be working with the estimating team in an early pre-con approach or an early sequencing approach. They may be leading a trade coordination meeting with all the disciplines and understanding how that work's going to be done. It's really across the board. It's all over the place, which is fun because it's a new opportunity every day. There's something that's coming up on the job, and they have the opportunity to really bridge the gap between the design and construction teams and all the trades and all those roles. So they have a unique opportunity to really use technology and the model to evolve the process.
It sounds like a pretty exciting role. I mean, it can be chaotic at times, but that also likely appeals to most of the folks that end up working there because you're solving problems and using the tools that they know firsthand made a big impact when they were out in the field and doing a lot of the work themselves before evolving into this role. Especially as technology has evolved and changed in the last 10 years, there was a time where the VDC team was the technology team. Like they were the ones that were using the tech. As that's changed now, where more folks out in the field are empowered to use tools and technology, I think the folks that sit in that seat, their role is going to shift and change in how they support and manage those teams. Because it's not just them that walks out and grabs the drone or the laser scanner or whatever it is. Everybody has an aspect of this in their pocket or their workflows. Brian, I'd love to hear, what do you think is common? Like, what does this look like for the next 5, 10, 15 years for the folks that are in these VDC roles?
So I think it's direct project engagement. And I was going to say, even going back to, we were talking about it on the construction side, but that's really where I came from on the design side. I had that role of setting up standards, building content, building templates, teaching, doing all that stuff. But being able to work with owners and understand what their needs were, that was one of my first things of really getting out of that traditional office support-based role. And then working on projects, we're saying, hey, here's our goal. Help us figure out how to integrate all these things and build technologies and moving forward. So being out, not in the office, behind a computer the whole time, but transitioning that to the other activities and really empowering the other architects, the engineers, the trade partners, that influences it. So almost so there's not a VDC leader. Do I need a VDC leader on the project in 15 years? Hopefully not, because that person has infused that into the culture of their company. And the schedulers are already using those tools. And those VDC people are the innovators who are out looking for the next thing and focusing on that continuous improvement. They're probably still going to be engaged in their projects, but they've empowered their colleagues to use these things and move forward.
I love that. And the empowerment aspect is so important as the progress of technology continues to accelerate. And so I think we're going to be in a great position, and those leaders are going to play a huge role as more and more technology is adopted across the project site, just to make sure everybody is successful and they understand, like, what's the goal? What are we trying to achieve? What questions do you have? And if we're not putting that in place, it's going to be harder to adopt all of these tools that we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's another thing. They need to be there at the outset. They need to set those expectations and have a clear understanding that these are the project goals, because technology is not going to drive the project goals. The project goals are the project goals first and foremost, but how is technology going to allow the team to achieve that or accelerate it or use it to save cost, use it to save schedule time, increase quality, whatever it is? That's what it's there for.
It's very much a force multiplier in what you're trying to achieve and not the goal in itself, which is a very different mindset. That can get folks caught into, shiny new toy syndrome is what I call it, where you go, okay, all the technology is here now, I want to check it out. And there's an important aspect of these roles to explore and check these tools out, but just make sure that aspiration to try out everything new doesn't cloud your ability to actively deploy the right tools for the project and the team at that time.
Yeah, and that's, we talk about it as the order of people, process, and technology, right? Technology has to be the last part. You can't just say, hey, there's this great new tool and you're going to shove it into a project. And it was like, I didn't ask for this. We don't need this. This isn't helping our project outcomes. Why are we doing this? Well, it's new and it's cool and I saw it, so let's try it. So, but yeah, people have a challenge. Figure out what that challenge is, figure out a process, and align the right tool for it. Because there's also probably multiple tools that do very similar things, and you got to figure out which one's right for the team.
Agreed. And Brian, you've teed up my last question very nicely here. I'd love to know, what's one tool that you use on every project, no matter what you're working on?
I would say my phone, right? Because my iPhone, is, your means of communication. It's how you connect with people. Whether you're picking up the phone and talking to somebody, whether you're on an app and learning, I think that's the biggest thing. And being here and talking to people, all the accidental run-ins you have with people, the conversation that you're talking to somebody that you know, and then you connect with them and you move forward, that conduit to the world and people across the world, right? Not just in your local state, your local region, but having that connectivity to people. Even though that's a digital tool, but have that enables a connection of people to learn, communicate, share ideas in whatever means possible, I think is really valuable. So being able to be out of the office and hear experiences and connect with people is really the valuable aspect.
And let's be real, that tool was a catalyst of change in construction, and I think has been a big part of bringing us to where we are today, where that access to information in the field, the access to documentation, the ability to make and create documentation is needed in a way that didn't require a wagon full of blueprints and tools and laser scanners and everything. I mean, what's happening now with reality capture and LiDAR on newer phones and everything, like, it's quite impressive. So it's a great answer.
And even down to old school, right? How do you learn? How do you find information to learn and, continuously gain knowledge? So
Dr. Google.
Yep.
I like it. Brian, well, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Digital Builder. For everybody out there listening, you likely have figured out, yes, this is Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast, and I am your host, Eric Thomas. We are still live at Autodesk University for a couple more hours today, so I'm very excited for a few more episodes. If you are interested and curious about the show, you can find us on YouTube. We are video first. I am surrounded by lights and cameras and all these fun things for a very good reason. Otherwise, we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you can find your favorite shows. And so until the next time, goodbye.